Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how education departments across the Western world are using a select group of radical activist NGOs to push radical theories and in classes and indoctrination, in effect, on LGBTQ issues and related issues. Now, these education departments all over the Western world are trying very hard to hide this from parents, to conceal it, and to give innocuous names to these radical activist ideological fanaticism classes. They'll call it the health and wellness class, or various other innocuous sounding names that sounds any parent looking at their health and wellness, oh, that's okay, yeah, fine, yeah, all right. Whereas before they may have called it sex education classes. Now, some parents have noticed what's going on in the sex education classes, pushing of this radical LGBTQ trans stuff and everything. And so they've complained about it and they've taken their children out of those classes. Now, a lot of those classes were formerly sort of optional or what's often known as elective class. You can elect to do that subject or choose to do that subject. And what they did in the first instance, these activists, in collusion with the government and the teachers' unions, like it's a globalist gig, this, and very generously and well funded and stacked to the rafters with radical activists. But what they would do, in most elective subjects, you've got a number of subjects which you can choose to study at any one. So on say, the third lesson of the day, every day, there are 3 or 4 elective subjects you can choose from. So you can only choose one, and the other 3 you have to miss out. If you want to do 2 in the same time slot, 2 different subjects, and you have to pick one, of course. So now what they very carefully did, I noticed a while ago, was the activist planners here, and they're all over the education department. The activist planners made sure that when it came to LGBTQ stuff, there was no other lesson that would clash with it. So that the students would pretty much sort of have to choose that as the only elective subject for that time slot or that lesson time slot. So they made it they effectively corralled them in. Now, there was a hue and a cry at one stage that there should be other subjects that could be offered in the same time slots. So what the one education department did, I noticed they put a lesson in which they called ethical studies, I think it was. Yes, ethical studies. And then that ethical studies was a mirror image of the LGBTQ sex education class anyway. So they still made sure that they were corralling and pushing the kids into, the radical agenda, ideological agenda stuff. Now, I just wanted to have a look at some, these sort of NGOs that are done. We need to just understand this is how it is. The education department, and this is what the globalist activists, social re-engineering activists do, rather than have the government department do the dirty work directly. What they do is they outsource it to an outside group. Now, this outside group will be billed as being, well, these are the experts. They are the experts. They are the super experienced, super qualified, independent, impartial, very credentialed experts. So why wouldn't we go to the experts? Why not? Well, we're not the experts in this, so we're giving this work to the experts to advise us, to guide us, and to show us what to do, to give us the benefit of their incredible experience, and they're independent and impartial. What more could you want? Experts. And that's why we're using these people. Of course, these groups are not expert in anything. They're radical activists. Their only expertise, if you can call it that, is to try and get hold of young, impressionable children and fill their minds full of bullshit. That's the only expertise these people have. But not only are they very well funded externally, through the likes of the George Soros type groups, but even the United Nations and so on. So they're quite well funded, but they're also very generously funded by, in effect, the Western taxpayer. So the departments of education are giving millions of dollars, many, tens of millions of dollars to these people to run around and write up a curriculum, various, is it curricula, I suppose is the plural, curriculums on how to indoctrinate children with LGBTQ. Now, if you do some digging, you'll find out there'll be a mention of a name, and we accept the advice from such and such group, and that there's only that mention, not who they are, where they're from, that we accept advice from or guidance from, or they will train our teachers. Or there'll be just maybe one line in a 1,000-page document about well, they don't talk about indoctrination program. Of course, they use all sorts of language and bureaucratic type legalese and so on to obscure what's going on and try and make it out that this will make your children happier and healthier and all this sort of stuff. So as a parent reading through it, I'll make my kid happy and healthy. Oh, I got no problem with that. What they don't say is it's a radical LGBTQ trans type agenda that's being pushed without the parents' knowledge or consent. Now, this one group, its name was mentioned once in this document from an education department, and again, quite in passing and deep in the bowels of the document. So I spotted it, had to go back and read it again. Okay, no, that's the name of an organisation. That's so. For example, an organisation, the betterment of children's lives. For example, I'm not saying that is or isn't an NGO, but for example. So when you read it in a sentence, you think they're just talking about the betterment of children's lives without realising that it's actually an organisation. It's not put in italics, or it's not referenced, the NGO organisation, the betterment of children's life. That's not phrased that way or placed in the document that way. So you could easily miss it, but they could legally say, well, we put it in there, it's in there, we declared it, but you'd miss it quite easily. So I had a look at that. Now, this is the homepage of this particular NGO. It's pretty tame. It talks about things like social justice and inclusion and happier and healthier children, and it's got a lot of sort of calming, soothing type phrases in there. But that's the homepage of the front group. Then you go to the group that's actually funding them. And it takes not that much digging really to find out the group is funny. You go to their website and it's hysterical radical shit that's on there. The people, all the people involved are radical activists in the LGBTQ arena. They've been applying their hatred of the West and white people and straight white people all over the place. These people are preaching hatred. Let's sort of make no bones about this. They are preaching hatred, and all the while saying that everyone else is the one who's preaching hatred. They use the most outrageous statistics. Did you know that 10,000 million trans people die every day? And it's all because of those fascist Nazis. And so they're going into schools, white schools, particularly targeting white boys, but white people generally. Effectively, the message: you're all a bunch of Nazis and killers of trans and gay people, and you better damn well mend your ways. The inaccuracies, the lies, the propaganda that they're using to base it on. The propaganda is beyond outrageous. So you could take a position and say, well, every white person in the world is Hitler. Therefore, we can kill every white person in the world because they're Hitler. Wait a minute, stop. Hitler? Are you kidding? So they can make up these fantastic and outrageous assertions, but then act on it and be given taxpayer dollars to act out their extreme, insane fantasies, and they can do it onto Western children. Now, so education departments across the Western world are outsourcing this sort of stuff to these type of people, but they know it's the wrong thing. They know they're doing something bad, if you like. So they do go to exceptional efforts at a political level, at a public service level, at every level. They're going to exceptional efforts to conceal it from parents. And if parents do kick up a fuss, they just rename the course. They just keep going. They just give it a different name and carry on as if nothing's changed. Even to the point of saying to kids, well, don't tell your parents. Now, these are the same teachers just saying, well, if daddy touches you, you can tell us and we'll sick the authorities onto him. Is your daddy a straight white guy? Let's get him. These are hysterical activists who believe Nazis are everywhere. And you see Nazis in their coffee cups and in their soup and under the bed and in the closet and so on. So these are the activists that are all across the education department in the West. Now, let's suppose it is a beneficial thing. Let's suppose this education, it's not education, it's sort of a radical indoctrination is beneficial to children. Well, then sell it as a benefit. Get right out into the public, to the mothers and the fathers and the moms and the pops, and get out there and sell it. Say, this is why it's beneficial. It is helpful. And for these factual reasons, not ideological hysteria, but factual reasons, this is why it's good and this is why we're doing it. But if you as a parent have a problem with that, we can talk about it, or your children can opt out. It's a purely elective subject, and your children, with your consent, can choose to participate in those classes or not. And we're quite happy with that. But this is why it's a benefit. This is why it's a help to your child and the society at large and so on. But they don't do that. They go to exceptional lengths to conceal it and hide it. And any parent who's got a problem with it is a Nazi. Now, as long as you've got that attitude, so we have a right to indoctrinate, we can base our indoctrination on a whole series of the most grotesque untruths and lies, and we're allowed to do to your kid whatever we want, and there's not a damn thing you do about it. You fucking Nazi. Now, as long as they've got that attitude, it's hardly helpful, and it's not surprising that parents, when they find out, are alarmed, if not amazed, and would ask the obvious question: why are you trying so hard to conceal this from us? If it is good, why are you trying so hard to conceal it? Similarly, if it is so beneficial, why does it rest completely rest on a bed of outrageous lies, false assertions, and grotesque untruths? If you want to teach our kids something, at least make it accurate, reliable, and factual. So these are legitimate questions. But as soon as these questions are asked, there's screams of Nazis just go up, and these activists are well funded. Now, if you had a situation where these people had to these activist NGOs had to sort of bid for business and say why it's helpful and so on, and demonstrate their expertise, not that they're radical activists or not that they hate straight white people, that's not a credential for anything, although they're using it for that now. But if they had to do that, you'd pick a completely different set of people to be giving advice. So clearly the intention of the teachers and the teachers' unions, and indeed the governments, globalist control Western governments, the intention is to get these activists into the schools and into the minds of the young children. That's clearly the intent. That is the objective. Because all the layers of protection that are built in, such as the school public service, such as school principals, or such as the government ministers and government officials and elected political committees, and they're all the safeguards that are in there. They're the safeguards to stop this sort of thing from happening. But rather than stop it, they're all facilitating it. Not only facilitating, it's their plan. They're actively going out to try and put this structure and this architecture in place. And it's happening all across the Western world simultaneously. So, it's obviously a centrally planned globalist gig. Otherwise, they'd all be going in different directions and handling it in different ways. But they're not. They're sticking to almost an exact same script all across the Western world. And so clearly it's a centrally coordinated globalist gig. But it's interesting to see how all the safeguards have fallen over and broken down, because they've been infiltrated by pro-globalists. But who in their right mind would believe that it would be helpful to any child to be told so many lies and so many untruths in order to indoctrinate them with a certain way of looking at it? For example, that these kids are told the most outrageous lies about the amount of trans people that are killed. Well, you've been horrible to trans people, you've been so horrible, you damn fucking Nazi, that those trans people kill themselves, you fucking Hitler. Now, this sort of thing is hardly helpful, you'd think, in an education department. Now, what you'd realise is some very deeply disturbed people have, who are so disturbed they're unemployable, they've decided to become, drug dealers and prostitutes and live a very dangerous life, mixing with some very undesirable and dangerous and unpredictable people. Now, because of that, many of them died from drug overdoses or indeed injuries sustained during, sex worker encounters and that sort of thing, and just living the sort of lives they are with an insufficient diet and, not going to the doctor when they should, or not taking medication when they should, also, and incidents of self-harm that become septic wounds and they die from, these sorts of things. Now, the argument, or one of the arguments put forward by the activists, well, if society was more welcoming of these people, then they wouldn't do that. But I don't know how much more society can be welcoming. To what extent, what level of welcoming is going to make a difference here? These are deeply disturbed people to begin with. If you look at people that are that disturbed in the psychological spectrum, then the incidence of self-harm and suicide and those other things is very high anyway in that category. Trans is a category of that psychological malaise, but is their rate of mortality greater or lesser than the other people in that category? It's roughly the same. You look at any drug addict, prostitute type lifestyle, then it's a real walk on the wild side. It's a dangerous existence, and it's not likely to end well. So trying to say to children, well, you're in fact killing these people, and if you don't change your ways, you are in effect murdering them. That's an outrageous assertion to make, and one that is backed up by no data at all backs that up. So these are outrageous activist indoctrinating lies that are being told to young children. Think, oh, well, if the adults said it. And so we need to realise this and understand how the education of Western children is being outsourced to radical white society-hating activists. Why don't they go to China and try this on? I mean, they'll be in prison like that. And so they don't do it. So they go to the West that has the most out of every country in the world, has the most accepting view and the most tolerant view of trans and LGBT, the most tolerant out of anywhere in the world. So they go to the West and say, actually, this is the worst in the world, when it's not. It is the most tolerant place. Try going to China and do this, see how you go. Try going to Saudi Arabia and see how you go. They won't do it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.